Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for attending, and I want to welcome you to Washington. And I want to assure you that much of what you've seen in the press recently, particularly with respect to American presidential politics and Islam, do not represent the views of my country. And represent a departure from the most fundamental American constitutional principles. In respect to the Gulen matter, we were privileged to be requested by the government of Turkey to investigate Gulen's global activities outside of Turkey. Some months ago. What I will speak to today are the first results of our findings in the United States. But most importantly, it is necessary for me to tell you that the work of this investigation stands on the shoulders of the work of many dozens of American parents and educators and politicians who have had the courage to denounce Gulen's tactics dating back many years. From the mayor of Lewiston, Maine, on our East Coast, to the legislature of Hawaii off our West Coast, the Gulen fraud was denounced in the United States well before we became involved. What we have done in our investigation is to pool information from these Americans as well as from a number, and quite a large number, of states which have independently audited Gulen schools. And I want to point out to you that Mr. Gulen has been quite inconsistent in the United States. When applying to come to the United States, he bragged that he was central to the establishment of a network of schools. But once he got here, it all changed. He accepts no responsibility for any of the schools. And all of the schools keep to the same lie, that they are not connected to Gulen, but rather that they are inspired by Gulen. Now, I want to say something very important. I am in no way attacking the devout Islamic beliefs of the movement. I am separating the movement and people within the movement from what I am calling the Gulen criminal organization, which are those connected intimately with the Gulen businesses, which are being run solely for the profit of the Gulen organization. There is, in fact, in this country, exported from Turkey, a complete Gulenist culture of deception. And I can tell you that rather than focus on the education of American children, much of the Gulen organization's focus has been taking care of American public officials. And I can tell you that my firm, during this investigation, has begun to file complaints administrative procedures at the state level in the United States in conjunction with American parents in those states denouncing the conduct of these Gulen schools. Our first filing was in California in February, because in California, Gulen controls a group of schools called the Magnolia Schools. And there had been a number of audits of the Gulen schools in California. And these audits had shown shameful conduct for educators. With almost 70% of the transactions, the financial transactions, not being properly documented. With an ongoing pattern of self-dealing. With an ongoing pattern of individuals moving from school to business organization back to school. One individual, named in our report, was hired in 2009 to be Magnolia's CEO. While working as CEO for Magnolia, this individual signed a contract for Accord Services, a supplier, for over $700,000 for the 2011-2012 school year. He then immediately leaves Magnolia to become Accord CEO at the end of that fiscal year. Every year after, Magnolia has signed a contract with Accord for those services in which the two organizations continue to be operational. In our upcoming Texas filing, which will occur on Monday, we talk about a company called Solidarity Contracting. The individual who worked as a business manager at Harmony from 2003 to 2009, then moved over to Solidarity, where he was awarded over $22 million in construction contracts in just 2 years. And this self-dealing goes on and on. And let me tell you, in the absence of anyone admitting to being part of the Gulen organization, we have come up with a number of markers. And here are some of them. One, each of these schools and organizations have a governing board of appointed, not elected individuals with those of Turkish descent operating in a supermajority. All of these schools use closely affiliated vendors, also operated, governed, or staffed by Turkish individuals. All of these schools heavily depend on recruiting Turkish, generally males, under the H-1B visa program. There is a systemic fraud in respect to the use by Gulen of H-1B visas. Because in actuality, the Gulen organization imposes in Turkish the word is tuzuk, on these H-1B recipients that in fact kicks back money to the Gulen criminal organization. The fact that during the worst of the American recession, when thousands of American teachers were unemployed, these schools continued to bring in often unqualified teachers from Turkey should have caused investigation. Because once again, it was a demonstration that the organization was preferring its interests in taking money from these H-1B holders from the interests of students in getting the best education. Another marker of the organization schools is free after-school tutoring programs staffed by teachers with no evidence of teachers being paid additional funds for additional or increased workloads. In addition to the markers in respect to the structure of the Gulen schools, we have compared state audits of the Gulen schools, which have occurred in a number of states of the United States. And these record loose internal controls, periodic insolvency, funds spent on immigration fees in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, which do not in any way benefit the children. Inappropriate use of public funds. Inappropriate commingling of funds. Use of shell entities to funnel public funds from schools to shells. Persistent conflicts of interest and self-dealing. Student field trips to Turkey. Impropriety regarding facility transactions. The most recent audit just was reported on within the last 2 weeks and took place in Oklahoma, where the Gulen organization there, through an artificial structure, improperly took in over $3 million more than the purchase price, and the public schools paid over $1.1 million more than they were even legally obligated to pay. So the question becomes, what is Mr. Gulen and the organizations he controls doing with all of this money? Because we believe the Gulen schools in the United States are in receipt of something like $1.5 billion annually of American taxpayer money. Now, I can tell you what they're doing with part of the money that they steal from their own teachers. They're giving it to American politicians because impunity costs money. And let me discuss impunity, because everything I'm telling you is largely in the public record. There are ongoing FBI investigations. But because the Gulenists, in comparison to the mafia and other criminal organizations, hide control and hide relationships, it is very difficult to track. But you can see it, sadly, in American legislation. Now, there's an example in front of me, and I want to be clear that I have no evidence that this piece of legislation is connected to the Gulen organization. But it's an amazing coincidence that 3 days after we filed in California a very well-documented complaint against the Magnolia schools, Assembly Bill 2806 in California shows up in a way that would effectively, it is directed specifically to the people who had audited the Magnolia School. And it changes the legal standard required for an audit such that it would be very difficult for a further audit of Magnolia to occur. These types of benefits from legislation are one of the results, one must imagine, from an organization that is under investigation by the Congress of the United States for hundreds of trips by congressmen to Turkey. In Indiana, a small state in the United States, over 400 local and state officials have visited Turkey. Now, I don't want to say anything negative about tourism in Turkey today. Turkey will welcome everyone, no question. However, I think we should put a limit on American politicians, because clearly these trips to Turkey are not helping either Turkey or the United States establish a straightforward bilateral relationship. But what is incredible about the ongoing political contributions, and in our Texas complaint, we are going to document the contributions in Texas. And with respect to the federal election, we will, in our white paper, list the payments we find. In fact, it is important to point out that one of the senators here in the United States has returned money to the Gulen organization. After they analyzed exactly who the money came from, contacted the people, and those people couldn't even recognize the name of the senator. The situation in the United States is made more important for a number of reasons. Number one, in part, no doubt, related to the crackdown in Turkey, Gulen schools in the United States are expanding at a massive rate. And we think that will only continue. In fact, the Magnolia schools had 8 applications, which after we were appointed, for some reason, these applications were pulled. And Magnolia admitted that there were irregularities in their applications. And these irregularities in applications have been seen consistently in Gulen-related schools outside the United States. But the other concerning issue is their attempt to get onto military bases. This seems to be an ongoing focus. And what is concerning is that my firm has obtained the evidence of whistleblowers who have provided us with evidence of proselytizing. And by proselytizing, I mean selection of a small cadre of children in each class to be groomed to ultimately be sympathetic and or join the organization. In some ways mimicking the AB system in the dormitories in Turkey. So we have today published an article about that in a newspaper called The Hill. So what we can tell you at this point is that the Gulen criminal organization in the United States continues to grow, continues to move money and launder money, and continues to operate with impunity. We are filing state-by-state complaints. As I said, we filed California. We are filing Texas. And we want to make something very clear. In the United States, there is a big discussion between public schools and charter schools in terms of how education is focused. We take no position on that structure. But the Gulen organization, and in some ways I would call the Gulen organization a plastic organization. It contours itself to the shape of the best financial opportunity. It has been a consistent violator of U.S. laws and regulations within the freedom the charter schools have been given. And it has abused that right. So we are continuing to, and we will continue to, file complaints in these states. We are intending, and through this meeting, we will continue to request the testimony of Turkish Americans and Turkish nationals who have been involved in the Gulen schools, either in Turkey or in the United States, to come forward to us confidentially through our website. We will, in the next month, be publishing a white paper amalgamating all of our findings, and we will begin a more formal process of reviewing Gulen's activities in Africa and Europe and connecting them to his activities here. What is fundamental to understand is that we believe many of these monies are being moved back to Turkey to destabilize activities in Turkey. And we will be urging American, local, state, and federal legislators to heed the requests of hundreds, if not thousands, of American taxpayers and extend the investigation of the Gulen operations, which we know are ongoing. Thank you very much.
I have two questions. One of them, we and Turkey know how dangerous they are. Do you feel any threats, or do you get any blackmail from the Gulen movement? And the second question is, yesterday we had a chance to talk with Turkish Foreign Minister. He had talked with the John Kerry, Mr. Kerry, and actually state are asking more evidence from Turkey about Gulen movement. Sir, are you going to provide these evidence to state as well, American government?
Look, we are going to be publishing this evidence, so the evidence will be available. But let's be clear. We have a foot high of audits in the American audits by American auditors. You know, one of the things people need to understand about Gulen is it is what I call a false flag operation. It presents itself as one thing when it's another. In America, it presents itself as friendly Islam. In Turkey, when you hear his speech on Jerusalem, it is wildly anti-Semitic and unfriendly. So he changes like the wind. But the American government has a treasure trove of evidence already. What we need to do is have more people like Senator Ayotte hand back Gulen's money. That's what's important.
What about the threats? Do you get any threats?
Look, thank God, in terms of blackmail, I lead too boring a life. And in terms of threats, regularly. And the threats are interesting because the threats are everywhere. Why did the American parents not get together earlier? Because they've all received threats. Everyone. Every academic I talk to will only meet me in hidden locations because they fear not murder, but they fear that 3 months from now, someone will write a derogatory professional note and bring down their academic standing. I've been told that I will be disbarred. I've been told that I will be killed. I have been told all of these things, but they are not the first, frankly. So you do what you can. Yes, sir.
Bu
Before you ask the question, if you wouldn't mind to just state your name and your organization.
Askeri üslere girilmesiyle ilgili
Hold on. I don't have a. Thank you very much.
askeri üslere girmeye çalışıyorlar diye bir açıklamanız oldu.
Hold on. Here, could you just. Oh, I guess it doesn't work.
Go ahead. You can do it now.
Okay, it should be working now.
Okay.
Okay, you mentioned something about entering the military bases.
Go ahead.
Ha, bunu biraz açabilir misiniz? Yani amaçları ne? Yani Türkiye'de de mesela casusluk faaliyetleri söz konusu. Burada da bu amaçla askeri üslere girmek istiyor olabilirler mi?
What is their purpose? Why do they want to do this?
Okay, and now you. The question is, why do they want to get onto military bases? One answer is to replicate what they've done in Turkey. To replicate this idea of a golden generation. What appears certain is that military bases have been targeted. They can explain why. Because as we continue shining a light on their activities, they are hiring more lawyers, more PR agencies, and people will start providing us with explanations. You can rest assured.
Thank you. Do you think the U.S. administration support and protect Gülen and his movement?
Look, in the United States, we have something called the deep state. I think you've heard of it. So it would be naive for me to look you in the eye and say no. That's all I'm going to say.
Merhaba. Şimdi bu son soruya ve onun cevabına ilişkin bir ikinci sorum olacak. O da şu.
I want to ask something related to the last question, and I also have another question.
Evet, bir Amerikan derin devletinden de, derin yapısından da bunun adına her ne diyecekseniz
Even if you call this a deep government, deep state, what you call,
bahsetmek mümkün. Şimdi bu yapının gerek Amerika'da gerek dünyada
the structure, even in the U.S. or in Turkey,
ve gerekse Türkiye'de
or in Turkey,
biz bir üst akıl tarafından üst akıl mikrofon ses çıkmıyor mu? Ses. Bu yapının gerek Türkiye'de
üst akıllar, kind of like higher intelligence,
idare edildiğini
and it's been managed like that,
ve bir amaçlarının olduğunu
and they have a purpose,
biz Türkiye'de biliyoruz.
and we know this in Turkey.
Bu konuda dünyanın çeşitli ülkelerinden,
In many countries in the world,
bunun içerisinde Amerika,
and U.S. is included,
İsrail,
Israel,
derin Avrupa
and the deep Europe,
dahil.
and they're included.
Böylesi bir yapı
This kind of structure,
ve himaye edilen Gülen cemaatiyle
Gülen and
Mücadelede ne kadar başarı elde edebileceksiniz?
And what kind of success you're going to achieve
Thanks.
fighting against the Gulen movement in all these countries?
Thank you for your question. I want to say that if given the time and resources, I expect we have a high chance of success. Because whatever the deep states may want, the criminal nature of the organization now has overtaken what might have been a good idea 20 years ago. That's why I'm confident that this initiative can meet with success if given time, patience, and support. But I want to stress, we live in rule of law states. We must put evidence together. We must have people willing to provide testimony. And that's why I'm here today, honestly, because I want to inspire more people to come forward. And that's why I'm planning to have an event like this in Turkey. Yes, sir.
Ben, tamam, oldu ben elimde kal. Geliyor sesim. Geliyor mu? Hı. Sesim geliyor mu size? Yok, Türkçe soracağım, evet. Size soruyorum. Şimdi delilleri toplamaktan bahsettiniz ve bunun için de sabır gerektiğini söylediniz az önce. Fakat bize anlattığınız bulgular yeterince çarpıcı. Dolayısıyla hukuk için bürokraside ya da medyada ya da kamuda bunları şu anda ikna sorunu yaşıyor musunuz? Yaşadınız mı? Yayın. Teşekkür ederim.
Look, we are competing against millions of dollars in political donations. From the top of America to the bottom. From the sheriff to the highest office. Money is being paid. Which I must tell you honestly has been eye-opening to me. For those who know my career, I have worked in Russia, I have worked in Africa, I have worked in Latin America. And if you told me an organization like Gulen could penetrate the United States and obtain the political and media influence they've managed to obtain here, I wouldn't have believed it. I don't know if I'd have believed it in Zambia, let alone the United States. No disrespect to Zambia, where I represented the former president. I'm just saying. I know you have another event. I wish you every success in your trip. I want you to know how much Turkey is appreciated. today's press perhaps aside. And I want you to know you have our sympathy in respect to these bombings you sustain. And you have the thanks of the world for the millions of refugees you have taken in. Thank you very much.